I'm Carmen, and I never thought my life would unravel in a single suffocating night. For over 20 years, I've shared a home with Daniel, a man whose warmth once painted my world in vibrant hues. But now, our days are cloaked in a silence that chokes me. In a desperate bid to reclaim his gaze, to feel seen again, I stepped into a shadowy world I didn't understand. A place of secrets and unspoken rules that promised to shatter the walls between us. But as I stood under a harsh spotlight, surrounded by strangers' piercing stares, I felt a chill creep into my bones. What had I done? And could I ever undo the darkness I'd unleashed? There's a certain weight to the air in this house, a heaviness that clings to every corner like damp fog rolling in off the Hudson. I'm Carmen, 43 years old, sitting at our worn kitchen table in upstate New York, staring into a cup of coffee that's gone cold hours ago. The bitter scent lingers, mixing with the faint trace of rain slipping through the cracked window. The old wooden floors creak beneath me, even when I don't move, as if the house itself is restless, echoing the ache in my chest. I've been married to Daniel for over 20 years now. He's 45, a man whose once warm hazel eyes used to search mine for secrets, for dreams, but now they dart away, hiding behind the shield of his work as a financial consultant. We met at a college art exhibit, back when the world felt like a canvas we could paint together. I remember standing in front of a chaotic abstract piece, laughing over how neither of us understood it, but we pretended to anyway. That night we bonded over shared aspirations, building a life, a home, a sanctuary. And we did, here in this quiet suburban retreat, with its overgrown garden and sagging porch. But somewhere along the way, the colors of our masterpiece faded. Now our evenings are filled with silence, the kind that presses against your skin until you feel invisible. I escape to the garden for hours, digging into the earth with bare hands, letting the dirt stain my fingers as if it could root me to something real. Daniel, though, he buries himself in spreadsheets and late-night calls, avoiding my gaze like I'm a stranger who wandered into his life by mistake. I stand in front of the bedroom mirror, my reflection staring back at me like a stranger I'm trying to recognize. My fingers tremble slightly as I slip into a black dress I haven't worn in years, the fabric clinging to my skin like a forgotten memory. It's tighter than I remember, hugging every curve, and I can't help but wonder if I'm still the woman who once felt bold enough to wear it. My heart thumps unevenly, a mix of nerves and curiosity swirling in my chest. I catch a glimpse of Daniel in the doorway behind me, his frame rigid, his hazel eyes fixed on me with an expression I can't decipher. Is it resentment? Regret? Something darker? Then he speaks, his voice low and edged with bitterness. Let's see how you act when given freedom. The words cut deep, sharper than I expected, and I feel a knot tighten in my stomach. I want to snap back, to ask what he means, but my throat closes up, and I just keep my eyes on the mirror, pretending to adjust the strap of my dress. The drive to the club is suffocating, the silence between us heavier than the humid night air outside. I stare out the window as the city lights blur into streaks of color, my mind racing with questions I don't dare voice. Why this sudden outing? Why now, after months of barely speaking? We pull up to a discreet venue on the outskirts of town, a place called the Obsidian Room. There's no sign, no flashy marquee, just an unmarked building with tinted windows that seem to swallow the light. A single red bulb glows above the door, casting an eerie crimson hue over the cracked pavement. It feels like stepping into a shadow as we cross the threshold of the Obsidian Room. The interior is dimly lit, all dark velvet and hushed whispers, the kind of place that hides secrets in plain sight. My pulse quickens as we're led through a maze of corridors by a man named Victor, the host, whose sharp eyes seem to see right through me. His presence is commanding, almost suffocating, and I can't shake the feeling that I'm walking into something I won't be able to walk away from. Daniel's hand brushes mine for a fleeting moment, but there's no warmth in it. just a reminder of the distance between us. We're ushered into a private room at the end of a long hallway, and the door clicks shut behind us with a finality that makes my stomach lurch. The space is stark, almost clinical, with bare walls and a single wooden chair positioned in the center under a harsh spotlight. The air feels thick, oppressive, like it's pressing down on my chest. 5 older men, all in their 50s or 60s, stand in a loose semicircle near the chair. They're dressed in tailored suits, exuding a quiet, unsettling confidence. One has a silver beard that glints in the light. Another bears a jagged scar across his cheek. Their names don't matter to me, but their gazes do, piercing, calculating, as if they're measuring something in me I didn't even know was there. Victor steps forward, his voice low and commanding as he gestures toward the chair. He has to watch, until the end. My heart slams against my ribs, a cold sweat breaking out on my skin. I glance at Daniel, searching for some kind of explanation, but his face is a mask of tension, his jaw tight. He doesn't resist as he moves to the chair, sitting down with a deliberate slowness. His hazel eyes lock onto mine, a storm of emotions swirling in them. Challenge, pain, something I can't name. If you're capable of this, do it, he says, his voice rough, almost breaking. But I need to see. I'm frozen, my mind spinning out of control. This isn't just... The silence in the room is suffocating, broken only by the faint rustle of the curtains as a draft creeps through the unseen cracks. My legs tremble beneath me as I take a step toward Daniel, the cold floor biting into my bare feet. The men who stood witness to what just unfolded have retreated into the shadows, their presence still heavy, like ghosts lingering at the edge of my vision. Victor stands near the door, his sharp gaze cutting through the dim light, a silent judge of this wreckage I've created. I can barely breathe as I look at Daniel, still seated in that stark wooden chair under the harsh spotlight. His face is a storm of anguish and revulsion, his hazel eyes glassy, unblinking, as if he's trying to erase the last hour from his mind. I open my mouth, my voice barely above a whisper, raw and trembling. This was about you. I wanted you to see me again. The words spill out like a desperate plea, a fragile thread I'm clinging to, hoping to explain the chaos I've unleashed. For years I've felt invisible, a shadow in our own home. And this twisted act was my scream into the void, a way to force his eyes back on me, even if it was through pain. My hands shake as I reach out, fingers stretching toward him, aching to bridge the chasm between us. But he recoils, the chair scraping harshly against the floor, a sound that slices through the stillness like a blade. His rejection stings more than I can bear, and I freeze, my arm hovering in the empty space between us. His voice comes then, cold and sharp, cutting deeper than any physical wound. I saw, and now I can't unsee it. Each word lands like a stone, heavy and unyielding, piling up until I feel crushed beneath their weight. I stagger back, the impact of his disgust hitting me like a physical blow. I've broken something between us, something sacred, and the shards are too jagged to ever piece back together. My chest tightens, a bitter taste of regret coating my tongue, sour and unrelenting. The warmth of the lamps overhead bathes my skin. The days after that night at the Obsidian Room passed in a haze, a suffocating blur of silence that wrapped around me like a shroud. I wandered through our house in upstate New York, a ghost in my own life, my footsteps echoing on the creaky wooden floors as I moved from room to room with no purpose. Daniel had taken to sleeping in the guest room, the door firmly shut, a barrier as solid as the one between us now. He avoided me entirely, his presence a void I could feel even when he wasn't there. I'd catch myself staring at the closed door, wondering if he was replaying that night in his mind as obsessively as I was. Every moment of it haunted me. The harsh spotlight, the weight of those strangers' eyes, the raw exposure of my desperation. I'd pushed boundaries in a way that felt like tearing open a wound, hoping to shock us both back to life. But had I destroyed us instead? Or were we already shattered, just waiting for the final blow? I wrestled with myself, torn between a stubborn defiance. I'd done what I felt I had to, and a gnawing guilt that clawed at my insides, whispering that I'd gone too far. On the 7th day, I returned from a walk in the overgrown garden, my hands still dusted with earth, the scent of damp soil clinging to my skin. I needed that time outside, the quiet of the trees and the bite of the autumn air to steady my unraveling thoughts. But as I stepped into the kitchen, my breath caught. Daniel was there, seated at the table, the first time I'd seen him in days. His face was drawn, his hazel eyes hollowed out, like he'd aged a decade in a week. A stack of papers sat in front of him, neat and deliberate, and my stomach twisted with a sickening premonition. He looked up at me, really looked at me, for the first time since that night, and the emptiness in his gaze was worse than any anger could have been. Without a word, he slid the papers across the table, the sound of them scraping against the wood unnervingly loud in the stillness. Didn't weeks have turned into a quiet, hollow stretch of time since Daniel left for good? The divorce papers signed and finalized with a cold, clinical precision that felt like the last nail in a coffin I'd built myself. I'm alone now in this house in upstate New York, a space that once held our shared dreams, but now feels like a cavern, too vast and empty for just me. Every corner whispers with memories of him, his laughter bouncing off the walls, the way he'd hum off-key while cooking on lazy Sundays. The creaky wooden floors seem to groan louder in his absence, as if they, too, miss the weight of his steps. I wander through the rooms, a ghost among relics of a life I no longer recognize, my fingers brushing over surfaces that still hold the warmth of a past I can't reclaim. Yesterday, I started packing his things into cardboard boxes, a task that feels both necessary and excruciating. I folded his shirts with mechanical care, the scent of his cologne lingering on the fabric like a stubborn ghost. In one of the drawers, tucked beneath a pile of old receipts, I found a photograph of us from years ago, taken on a beach somewhere along the Jersey shore. We're laughing, our faces pressed close, the sun glinting off the waves behind us. I sat on the edge of our bed, my bed now, holding that photo, a sharp pang of loss slicing through me. But with it came a strange clarity, a realization that the people in that picture are gone, washed away by time and silence long before that night at the Obsidian Room shattered us completely. I don't know if I mourn the loss of Daniel or the loss of who I thought we were, but I know I can't keep clinging to either. I've started seeing a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Ellis, whose gentle voice and steady gaze feel like a lifeline in this storm I've created. In her small, warmly lit office, I've begun to unpack not just what I did that night, the raw, desperate act that tore everything apart, but the years of silence that led me there. I wanted to shock Daniel, to force him to see me after feeling invisible don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.